was going to ask this week. I read something where Sanat Kumar came to Earth 23 million years ago, and he's been working with humans for 18 million years. So like there's this missing 5 million years. And then if he started then, all the other, like the Lemurian Fellowship, they're saying that their civilization didn't begin until about 78,000 years ago. And the archaeologists and whatnot, they're having a hard time convincing us that humans became civilized as much as even 30,000 years ago. That's where they're saying the Sumerians are. And so like, I'm doing the math in my head. It must mean that the Sanat Kumara, when he began working with humans, he was working with the first 2 root races.
No, it was actually the 3rd root race that was here. The first 2 root races were not even physical. And, but the 3rd root race, according to the ancient wisdom, was the Lemurian. But the thing is that people that pick up on the history of humanity often call the different races and sub-races by different names, and that creates some confusion. But now there's Michael Cremo has put out a book called Forbidden Archaeology, and he traces back humanity for millions of years, and he's got archaeological evidence to support this, that there has been intelligent humans on the earth for millions of years. But when these discoveries are made, archaeologists that are orthodox suppress them because they want to go along with the correct orthodoxy, so to speak. And a lot of the evidence in the past has been submitted to the Smithsonian Institute, and it's disappeared. Nobody can find it. And the theory is that there's special rooms in the Institute that they have skeletons of giants and all kinds of things from the past that doesn't fit the narrative of Orthodox science. So they put them in special rooms, a little bit like the Ark of the Covenant was in the movie was put away. So anyway, yeah, there's been all kinds of things sent to the Smithsonian Institute, especially a century or so ago, that just never showed up again, and nobody knows where they are. But there's still, even with that, there's still a lot of hardcore evidence that humanity has been here for a long time. And Orthodox science itself keeps going back. When I was younger, they only went back like 500,000 years. Now they found evidence of intelligent humanity back 2-3 million years. And they keep, even Orthodoxy keeps going back farther and farther for the first intelligent humans. And okay.
Well, that's kind of interesting with the thing that's, I think it was Scott posted about the UFO stuff. You see that? How the Pentagon is acknowledging, they've been doing stuff like that for the last few months or year or so, I think.
Yeah, it's funny. They've had, there's been a lot of evidence for years and years, and now they're kind of admitting there's evidence for the first time. So some people think we're near the time when they will come out with a lot more stuff. Who knows? So
well, it's about time. Because anyone that would like to have a look, this marvelous lady Gina Maria Colvin Hill is the name of her YouTube channel, and it's as good as any to see live footage from all over the world of all different types of entities, spacecraft, cloaked as clouds or otherwise, faces and all this sort. And it is just flowing. So Gina, G-I-N-A, Maria Maria Colvin, Colvin Hill.
Okay. Okay, we'll keep that in mind.
Yep.
You know, the interesting thing about these triangular UFOs is they not only travel in the air, but they plunge into the water going at terrific speeds, and like instead of hitting a barrier like a fast object does when it hits water, they go in the water like it's not even there almost. So that's pretty interesting. It also indicates the craft could be etheric, where they go in between being etheric matter and physical matter. And it's what I've always thought about them. It's the only thing that makes a lot of sense.
Hey,
But,
JJ,
yeah.
the just a little backstory on that. I was telling Rick earlier, this gal that I work with, and we drive an hour and a half to work together and an hour and a half back, and her dad is a retired engineer from Area 51. I live about 150 miles as a crow flies from Area 51, and she lived in a town. She grew up in a town that was closer called Alamo.
Yeah.
And now her brother, her dad's retired, but her brother's an engineer there right now. And for the longest time, she would say that she doesn't believe in UFOs and that they're stupid, and she wouldn't participate in that type of conversation when it would come up in our group that travels to work together. And then she finally confided in me last week all of this stuff. Not only does she believe in it, but she has seen one when she was 16 years old, and she gets information from her brother that only after they can release it, because her dad and her brother get lie detector tests every year, and if her dad tells anything, then he loses his pension and so forth. But there's some things that they can release, and they released this one to her about 2 weeks ago. It was several days before it broke into the internet, and she shared that with me and told me all this stuff. It was just amazing to me, because she doesn't like being inundated with questions and people trying to pry information out of her, because she has a connection there. But she shared that with me, and I thought that was amazing.
Yeah. It's interesting when if there is ever a day of disclosure, they're going to have to revamp Einstein's theories, because it would mean that these UFOs can travel faster than the speed of light. And so that will be interesting to find out how they managed to do that.
The other point that's been made in the past, whether or not it applies to this, is that the military has used UFOs as a cover story for experimental aircraft. And both things can be true at the same time, but that's a sort of information operation they use, or have used at least in the
Absolutely.
past.
I mean, the UFOs are really experimental aircraft. Is that the theory?
Well, not what I'm saying is not necessarily all of them, but that's something that the military does.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's definitely true that some UFO sightings have been experimental aircraft, but that doesn't explain them all by a long ways. And because some of them
Yeah,
are,
I think it's a combination of 2 or 3 different types of things going on there.
yeah, they say about 90% of them can be explained by just normal events and aircraft and anomalies and so on.
Yeah.
And then there's about there's about
90%.
Yeah, there's about 10% they can't explain. And,
Has anyone else ever heard? Has anyone else ever heard of a flying pyramid, though? This is the first time I've heard of a flying pyramid.
I've never heard of
There's
it. It was a triangular shape. Was it supposed to be like a actual pyramid?
Yeah, if you watch the video, you can see that it's a pyramid, and I think they use the word pyramid. And that
Really?
that's what
Really?
grabbed my attention.
Oh, I'll have
Yeah.
to take another look. I noticed it looked like a triangle, but I didn't realize it was a actual pyramid.
Yeah, it was on the Tucker Carlson show last night, and I put that post on there this morning with the footage.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Well, interestingly, when in the book of Revelations says the New Jerusalem, when it descends, will be in the shape of a pyramid.
Yeah.
that's immediately what grabbed my attention.
The pyramid shape is the only shape that really fits the description of the New Jerusalem.
The height and the width and the depth thereof are equal.
Yeah, yeah. Another interesting thing,
Yeah.
the Great Pyramid at Giza, instead of 4 sides, it actually has 8 sides. Each one of the sides is just a little bit at an angle. So each side that looks like one side is really 2. So the Great Pyramid
cool.
actually has 8 sides to it, which would have required tremendous precision to be able to build that. It was an amazing thing. But anyway, anything else before we move on? We'll just make this.
Well, that's a good point too. I think
Yeah.
pardon me. I think that's a great point for anyone who is daring enough or willing enough to let it go into their mind to consider just how these things can be made, and because it's kind of like starting slow and then looking into it, and then you realize how real it is, and it's more easily comprehensible.
Yeah, I don't know if with all of our technology, if we could duplicate the Great Pyramid today, with those.
That's what they say, yeah, and
it took.
that's right. And so,
I mean, with the rooms in it and everything, and the exact places they are, it was an amazing engineering feat. Okay,
yes.
we'll go into our class as much as we can here. We're talking about the next section. We're going to talk about the molecular commitment. Anybody that's dedicated not only to what we're doing, but to furthering the progress of humanity, to be a disciple in most any thought system, requires a certain amount of dedication. And if a person is going to move forward on the path, he has 2 choices. The 2 choices are always before him. One choice is the choice of following the personality desires as it is attached to the things of the world. And the other choice is following the higher desires of the spirit as it seeks to ascend the ladder toward spiritual perfection and to return home, so to speak. And so we always have these choices before us. And when a person begins his evolution, he's not even aware of the 2 choices. He's just aware of, well, I got to do, I got to take care of things in the world. I got to do my job, earn a living, get as much as I can. And they go by the idea that he who dies with the most toys wins. And so the other choice isn't before him. And then eventually, after so many lifetimes, a person reaches a point where he thinks there must be more than this. And then he begins to discover there is a choice, always a choice. And so a person progresses a number of lifetimes with these choices. Sometimes he chooses the world, and sometimes, or the material side, and then other times he chooses the spirit, and he goes back and forth, and then he struggles to stay in the spiritual focus for a period of time, and then he retrogresses and falls backwards. And so eventually he takes 2 steps forward and 1 back, and then eventually almost every step is forward as he gets his focus on the light. And so when the person finally makes the decision to focus on the ways of the spirit, he or she, of course, makes a major commitment. Without a commitment, there is never an organization, without a bonding. And we see this from the tiny atoms and the components of the atoms on up to every creation there is. In the making of the most simple atom, the hydrogen atom, you have 1 proton making a bonding relationship with 1 electron, and that bonded relationship creates something greater than they are separately. And that bonded relationship holds them together and keeps the organization in play. And then the atoms make bonded relationships and create molecules. Molecules make bonded relationships and create all kinds of forms. And so every successful organization has some type of bonding, even a business, The bonding in the business is you have the boss and the employees, they get the paychecks, which creates a bonding. You feel obligation to go to work every day so you can get that check at the end of the week or the month or whatever. And you have these bonding ingredients involved in even worldly organizations. And spiritual organizations the same way. It requires a bonding relationship to be able to create spiritual organizations. So there's levels of commitment in the molecule, and to create a human molecule, it will take people that are committed to make it work, committed to work together, and committed to do everything necessary to keep the organization going and the life energy and circulation. And this commitment is important. And it's always involved, for the spiritual person, it always involves looking beyond the material. And one of the things that's most difficult is for the spiritual person is taking care of his obligations in the world, which often requires a lot of attention on the material side, yet still pursue the spiritual path. And this is one of the most difficult things for the disciple to do. Now, Jesus made these words. He says, you cannot serve God and mammon. So how do you suppose a disciple reaches this point to where he can, go out and make a living, yet still keep his focus on the spiritual side, when it's so difficult to serve God and mammon? Anybody got any comments on that, or how they handle this type of situation?
Well, in an abstract way, the 7th ray is perhaps helping with that, because the 7th ray is about bringing the material and the spirit together, the outer and the inner. So perhaps it'll become easier as the 7th ray becomes more dominant.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because we are having the seventh ray in, and it manifests physical form, which is connected to spirit, kind of in between uh, ray 1 and ray 6 there. So it's pretty, that's an interesting thought. How about practically in somebody's life here? Let's pick on somebody
Well,
that,
pick on me. I'll tell you. I use my work, of course, to make money, but also as a vehicle to make connections. I always have printed material that I give out. I get people's email addresses and I send them stuff and links. So you can just use whatever you do to make money as a vehicle to connect with other people in a spiritual way.
yeah. I think another key statement made by the Christ was the disciple needs to live in the world, but not of the world. And how would you interpret that, Curtis, in relation to sort of serving God and mammon?
Well, yeah, you're in it, but you don't have to participate at that lower frequency that average humanity is operating under. So you live in it, you live and move and have your being in the material world, but your thoughts are not the thoughts of the average person. They're more elevated. So you're not worldly, but you're living in the world, but you're more of a spiritual being in the
Okay.
material world.
Let's pick on David and Robin. One of you want to give us your thoughts on how do you stay spiritual yet still have to make a living and take care of having enough money to live on and everything.
I don't think we figured that one out yet.
It's a difficult one, isn't it?
It is. I'm about to go back to work and we have always barely made it. On the other hand, we've had more time than most to study. So
Yeah.
especially lately, since my son finally moved out, that was such a shock to our system. We took all that time and poured into studying. So we're about to find out how to balance.
Yeah, I think, would you say then that when you do have to focus on money, it's not because of the love of money? Would you say that would be a key?
Oh yeah, that's really never interested us.
But you do have to survive in this world. Oh,
Yeah.
somebody's making noise here. Let me make sure everybody's on mute. There we go. Yeah, what I found in my life is that to not make money the key ingredient, and that's why I've never really got rich, probably, but I've noticed that people that do make a lot of money, that's really important to succeed and get that material abundance. And they have that focus. That's their prime motive. Whereas people that are spiritual, they still have to make money, but that's not their prime focus. And if they're lucky, they get enough money to live on. But they have difficulty in getting a lot of money, and a lot of spiritual people think, well, be nice if I was a millionaire, I could do so many good things to help people and move the spiritual work ahead if I had a ton of money. But money is not going to manifest unless you put a lot of focus on. But you do have to put a certain amount of focus on, and this is a really big problem for a lot of people you meet on the spiritual path. And I've had times in my life where I just start to get ahead, and then I start focusing more on the spiritual, and then I have a financial disaster, and then I had to backtrack and put 100% attention on this physical side for a while till I can get back on my feet. And so in my life, I think it's been perhaps my major physical lesson in life to learn is to balance this out, because it's very difficult for people on the spiritual path to do that. And anybody else got any comment on how they handle that situation?
I do.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, I get it, it depends on the definition of serving mammon, because I think most of my life I've lived month to month, paycheck to paycheck, and as of recent, I'm just happy with that. I don't have a big urge to do any more than that. And one thing that's helped me is when I shared my one soul contact experience with the group, and they, and you explained to me that the next step was to help other people. The thing that came to me was when I come in contact with someone, or I'm thinking about someone else, is I ask the question, if that person's soul could talk to me, what would their soul say to me to help that person in wherever they're at? And so it doesn't matter what amount of money I'm making. That's sort of the thing that's foremost in my mind right now, is I ask that question with almost every person I meet now. Is there something I can do? Is there something their soul could tell me to do to help them in any way at all? And so that's where my thinking is. I don't really think about making money. I'm happy I have a job and stuff, but my mind's not there.
I find most the people on the spiritual path, it doesn't matter to them if they get rich or not, but they do, if they get enough to just live comfortably on and take care of the basics, they're pretty happy. Now, one of the problems a lot of people on the path make is they don't pay enough attention to the physical, and they're always hard up, and they're borrowing from everybody else, and so they become almost a drag on other people around them, and so they not unable to lift their associates up spiritually, because their associates run from them when they see them, because they figure that guy's going to want something from me. Okay, but the person on the spiritual path should always be able to be seen as somebody that you can lean on to, rather than having to give to them. Okay, so this person on the spiritual path should be a person that's viewed as having strength rather than weakness. And Jesus never went around saying, "Hey, man, can you spare few coins?" He didn't have, he was never a drag on anybody, and a lot of people that's on the spiritual path are focused too much away from the material world, to the point that it actually hurts them and their associates spiritually, because they eventually reach a point that if they aren't making enough money to live on, well, they're going to have to start asking friends and associates to help them out, and then they become a spiritual drag, And so the disciple has to reach this balance. If he has to make sure that he has enough to cover his needs, so that he can then focus and be a center of power on the spiritual path rather than a drag. And I'm sure a lot of people here have met people that are so focused on the spiritual that they just about starving to death half the time, and never have any money. They can never do anything. They're always borrowing from their friends, or wanting to move in with them, or something like this. And these people are not able to apply the Christ principle where they send out a helping hand and pull the others up. Okay, and this is where we have to put ourselves. And this is a really difficult lesson for disciples to learn, to be able to be a center of power. And there has to be a balance. All the time, the extremes of both sides of any equation are not the place to go. It's always between the two extremes. So we have one extreme of complete focus on the material, another extreme of the complete focus on the spiritual, whereas the correct is in between, where we focus enough on the material to take care of things, but not make that our prime focus. So even as we're doing our job to make money, we can have our focus on the spiritual goal. And that's what the disciple tries to do. And it's difficult. It takes focus to do that, to be able to work to make money. Yet as you're working to make money, your prime goal is to apply all your energies to the spiritual side. Okay, any more comment on that before we move on there?
Well, I find that
In,
the more successful I am, the more people listen to me.
Oh yeah, yeah. People don't listen to the guy that has no display of talents. That's for sure. Okay, now in the molecule, there's going to be several levels of support for it. When the molecular order is established upon the planet, and it's going to affect all levels of living eventually, it may take 1,000 years before this gets completely permeating society, but eventually it will. And we will have people that are committed to it on different levels. One, it's the lowest level will be seeing that it's workable and working within the system. And the highest levels is where the person sees the spiritual value and commits toward the spirit 100%. Now, the Christ said this, he said, many are called, few are chosen. So the interesting thing about being chosen is looking at it in a different light, is the chosen people are the people who have chosen correctly. People who have chosen correctly are the chosen. In other words, if you choose the Spirit chooses you. If you choose God, God chooses you. If you choose group energy, that group chooses you. And everyone is called to the realm of spirit, but few people make the choice to embrace the path 100%. That's why many are called, but few are chosen. We're all called to take the path of return and liberation, but few people commit themselves and make the choice to follow the path with 100% commitment. But what does it mean to be called? The called are those who have received a teaching that calls them to ascend to a higher level of consciousness. They must understand what the work is before they can choose or be chosen. So to be called in the molecular relationship is to reach an understanding so you know what it is. Then you can make an intelligent choice about your involvement. So just like any other spiritual work, the molecular relationship, you are called when you are presented with the information so that you can understand what it is. Then you are chosen when you choose to do whatever is necessary to make the molecular relationship work. So basically, the disciple will seek the union of souls to prepare a people for the coming of Christ and to seek the next great step in evolution. Now, there are two basic mantras that will be used regularly in the molecular relationship. The first one is a song of the 144,000, to which this group is familiar with. And the second is the great invocation revealed in the writings of Alice A. Bailey. So these are two powerful mantras that help to focus the disciples' energies on the realm of the spirit. Now we're going to end by going over what is called the pledge of the disciple that wants to participate in the true molecular relationship. This could be written a number of different ways. The principles in it is what the person wants to see. It says, I commit myself to join you, my brothers and sisters, as a follower of the Spirit of God and as a disciple of Christ or God, in totally dedicating myself to building the kingdom of God on the earth and preparing the way with eye of faith for the appearance of the Son of God. To aid in this, I covenant to do all in my power to assist in the materialization of the molecular relationship on the earth, or in other words, the kingdom of God on the earth. I covenant to be one with you by ever seeking the one Spirit of God with you, and resolve to solve all differences which may cause separation by seeking an answer and confirmation through the Spirit with you. I covenant to channel all my energies of sex, money, and power toward union and not separativeness, to consecrate myself and all these energies toward the purpose of God to create the union of souls and to establish the kingdom of God on the earth. Amen. Now, the main key to union here, this is the key to creating the link between heaven and earth, is the union of souls. And the most important part was I covenant to be one with you by ever seeking the one Spirit of God with you to resolve all differences. Okay, so you're always going to have differences, and eventually, oftentimes two people reach a point where they cannot resolve them on the personality level. And so you have to go to the Spirit. And in the realm of the Spirit, there is union. There's not two answers, there's always one answer, one path. A kingdom divided against itself cannot stand, as Jesus said. And the kingdom of heaven is not divided against itself. It only stands because it's built upon union. And so when there is a difference, there is always a path to union. And that path to union can be found if the two or more people get together and present their case before the Spirit, the inward Spirit that links all of us together. And when the two people tune in to the Spirit, they will receive an impression as to the right path to union, to the right resolution of the conflict or the disagreement. And that can be reached as long as both of them are willing to put spirit above material, the soul above the personality, the higher above the lower. And once it's accomplished, it's not difficult, but accomplishing this, the first several times between two or more people takes an act of will, because it doesn't happen easily, because a personality is very powerful for people. If a person, for instance, feels insulted or feels harmed or feels attacked by his brother, it's very difficult for them to raise their consciousness to spirit. It's so easy to keep it on the personality level. And by an act of will, the disciple has to raise his consciousness up. And that when two or more people will do this, no matter what the outward situation is, they can always reach oneness together. And this is difficult for even a lot of fairly spiritual people to accept, because even a lot of people that think they're on the spiritual path have told me that this is not possible, that they do not think they can reach agreement on everything that's important with a group, but it can be done. And this is perhaps the most important lesson for molecular applicants to learn. Okay, any comments or questions before we wrap it up?
Yeah, I think that's why Abraham Lincoln was such a great avatar, is he fought for a union of states because he knew the value that would come about through the United States.
Yeah.
If people can fight, for a union of souls like he did for the United States, then we would accomplish this greater purpose. Just keep that in mind.
Yeah, that's certainly true. It's when the United States first started out, the various states were actually had border wars with each other, similar to what nations do today. So the nations today are at a similar state of evolution that the United States was when the United States formed, where you had border conflicts and the states having a hard time getting along with each other. And eventually, we'll have a United States of the world, where the various countries won't even think of going to war with each other. Like Idaho never thinks of going to war with Wyoming, and Florida doesn't think of going to war with New Jersey. So eventually, United States will not think of going to war with Russia or China or anything like that. But let's hope that happens soon. And but evolution is all points toward union and raising up consciousness, and has to start on the individual level. Okay, any other comments or questions?
In a channel, the channel Paul Perini, Jesus said pertaining to your comment about being properly independent and relying on yourself first. Jesus said, bring your own plate, silverware.
Bring your own what?
Bring your own plate and silverware.
Oh, bring your own plate and silverware.
If you're invited to a home or invited to a meal, bring your own plate and silverware.
Yeah. Okay.
Isn't that funny?
The illustration that I'm showing here and on the molecular chat, this is New Jerusalem as was described by J.J. Dewey years ago.
Okay, yeah, Rick, he comes up with quite the artwork at times there. Okay, anything else? Well, it's good to see everybody and appreciate everybody being here. We've had good vibes, and we will see you next Sunday at 10 a.m. all being well.
Hey, may we live without borders.
Yeah,
Thank you,
right.
guys. Enjoy the evening.
Bet.
Hey, love
Oh,
all
cool.
of you.
Love y'all too.